Alright folks, if you're a regular viewer of the channel, you know my favorite artist of all time is Creedence Clearwater Revival. And over the last 2 years, on the 55th anniversary of CCR's album releases, I've been doing a re-listen to all their records, and now we're up to Willie and the Poor Boys, which is their third release from 1969 and their fourth release overall. If you're watching this on YouTube, we're probably about 4 to 6 weeks after the anniversary, which is why if you like these reactions and you want to see the full-length reactions and you want to get them early, consider supporting us on Patreon for a couple of bucks. So here we go. This is the first track of Willie and the Poor Boys, Down on the Corner. Let's do it. But first, like, subscribe, comment, click the bell for notifications, check out my new music video and single, Outlive My Life, wherever you get your music. Consider supporting us on Patreon for exclusive perks. It's really cheap. And subscribe to the Words Like That Arts and Media Podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. All right, now shut up and get to it. All that percussion coming in, leading you in. Great riff. Simple, but unique and catchy.
Early in the evening, just about supper time.
John Howland.
Over by the courthouse, they're starting to unwind. Down on the corner, out in the street, playing the poor boys are playing, bringing it up happy feet.
Great opening track. This is one of their most famous songs, one of their big hits, understandably so. It's catchy, it's infectious. I mentioned the riff. One of the best things about CCR was John Fogerty's ability to come up with riffs that were simple yet unique and catchy, and this might be the best, definitely one of the best that he came up with CCR. And that's one thing that he's kind of lost as his career has gone on. There haven't been a whole lot of songs that John's done in his solo career, particularly like after Center Field, that really had that good of a hook that it's simple, catchy, but unique. Lyrically, it's painting this picture of this band called Willie and the Poor Boys. I've heard them described as a working class man's Sergeant Pepper's. It is this fictional version, and each member of the band is supposed to represent one of the members of CCR playing on a street corner. And to me, I see it like in New Orleans, like they're on a street corner in New Orleans playing this song. Great commercial songwriting, but there's also a lot of artistic value in this. It's also a great opener for the record to really get in there and get you in the groove, get you hooked and ready to listen to the rest of the record, which we're about to do right now with It Came Out of the Sky. One of my favorite CCR album cuts. I also think it's one of their best, and it's not very well known. So here we go. Very Chuck Berry riff, opening riff here. Hear a rollicking piano over here on the left side. Obviously a throwback classic rock and roll track. You can hear Chuck Berry influences in there, particularly in the guitar riff, the opening riff. On the keys, you can hear like a little Richard vibe or Jerry Lee Lewis vibe going on. It's kind of got that little bit of a rockabilly feel with the classic rock and roll, which were, adjacent at the time in the 50s and kind of cross-pollinated. Lyrically, though, is where it really shines. This is essentially a sci-fi comedy script compressed into a 2-minute and 56-second song, less than 3 minutes. So the story here is something falls out of the sky, and this is harkening back, reminiscent of like 50s B movies. Even the title is reminiscent of that, is referencing that, like It Conquered the World, which was a classic B movie sci-fi about this alien coming. So something falls out of the sky into a field where this farmer is driving a tractor. And, what is it? A meteor? I don't know. But something comes out of the sky from outer space and scares this guy. His name is Jody, which is a name that Fogerty uses a lot in his songs. I can think of, I think, 3 off the top of my head that he uses Jody, the name Jody, and I don't know if that was somebody he knew or just a name he liked or whatever. So this guy named Jody is a farmer, falls off his tractor because this thing falls out of the sky, scares him almost to death, and he runs screaming. And then Fogerty goes through and he starts commenting on different aspects of the culture and society at the time, which I would say still continues today. It's still a valid criticism and critique. He said scientists said it was Mars. So the scientists rush out and they try to examine it and they're like, oh, this came from Mars. So he's kind of poking fun a little bit there of the scientific community. And then he mentions Spiro Agnew coming out and making a speech. Then he says that the Vatican says that the Lord has come, so he's kind of bringing religion in here a little bit of what their reaction might be. So we've got the scientific community, the political community, the religious community, and then he mentions Ronald Reagan, which is one of the first, I think, lyrics that reference Reagan. He says it's a communist plot. John throws that in there, that would be his reaction, where the Vatican was saying, oh, Lord's come back. Scientists saying it's Mars has come, and Ronald Reagan says, no, it's the communists. It's a little bit dated. When Fogerty starts actually using names from the period, it does make it harder for the lyrics to have the longevity and accessibility moving forward. But if you do know the historical context, it still plays well. And even if you don't, you get what he's saying. You don't necessarily have to know who Spiro Agnew is, who Ronald Reagan is, to get that he's talking about somebody in a political realm. The next verse, he kind of takes a stab at the media. The newspapers rush out, and Walter and Eric, I think it's supposed to be Walter Cronkite. I'm not sure who Eric is supposed to be. I think I knew this at one point, but regardless, but it's taking a stab at the media of how they're covering it and making a big deal out of it. And then it ends with Jody, who's the farmer that discovered this, that fell into his field. He says, it's mine, but you got it for $17 million, whoever the highest bidder is, which is also kind of a stab at the materialism and greed at the time. But also, if Jody was a farmer, probably a poor guy, which kind of ties into the whole theme of the record, the Willie and the Poor Boys. The first track is a band, a poor band that's out there playing on the street corner trying to make money, and then this guy sounds like a poor farmer. So let's see what he can do with the $17 million. I don't know why a movie has not been made, because the script is there. You could even set it in the 60s, in the time period, and that you could have all of this commentary on the media, on politicians, on the science community in the movie, where all these different competing interests are trying to acquire this piece, whatever it is, a meteorite or whatever. I think it is just ripe for a film. Love this track, little known, but a great second track to start the record off. Now we're going to switch gears musically a little bit with a cover of Leadbelly's Cotton Fields. Here we go. Great harmony from Fogerty here. He's doing all those parts. Great version of that. That's become a classic folk standard. As somebody from the South, I've heard many different versions of this. I heard this song growing up, completely detached from CCR. Didn't know that they even did a version until I was a teenager. Excellent cover. John arranging, performing all of the harmonies himself. It's just lush landscape of vocals there. I am not as huge of a fan as a lot of CCR fans are, and I think it's just because I knew the song so well. Different versions of it are just people singing it around in my life, that this just kind of seems like, oh, it's a really good version done by CCR, and there's nothing wrong with that. But sometimes CCR, when they do covers, they really put a unique stamp on it that it's like theirs is the definitive version. For me, on this one they didn't do that, but that doesn't mean that it's still not a great cover, because it absolutely is. Up next, these are 2 tracks I'm going to play back to back because it just one rolls right into the other. This is Poor Boy Shuffle, which is a rare instrumental from the group, and it rolls right into a track called Feelin' Blue, under the radar, underrated album cut from them. Here we go. Alright, start to fade out and actually pan from left to right. Sounds like, I don't know if I ever noticed that. Wait, what? Left side. A grooving drum beat? What? Yeah. Sassy, swaggering, bluesy riff, yeah. One of the greatest segues, transitions between songs that I've ever heard.
But I ain't no fool. Feel it in my bones is blue. Feeling blue, 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 blue. Feeling blue, 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 blue. Feeling blue, blue.
All right, so go back and talk about Poor Boy Shuffle. That was a folk instrumental. It was supposed to be like an in-universe. Willie and the Poor Boys supposed to be playing that song. Like, that's one of the songs they're playing on the street corner that John's talking about in Down on the Corner. And it's nice. It's a very short track. It kind of gets maybe a little repetitive, but just when it starts to get there, it starts to fade. It starts to shift. And I didn't remember everything moving from the left side to the right. So not only is it fading in volume, but it's fading in channel from left to right, and then this drum beat that's in a totally different groove from Poor Boy Shuffle comes up, fades in on that left side, and pushes out the instrumental, and you've got this groove that's kind of really sassy and give you a little bit of a swagger. And John starts singing this song about, again, we're talking lower class, we're talking working class, we're talking a guy who is not in a great situation, and everything that's going on around him is making him depressed. He's feeling blue, and you could look at it that it's literal, but also metaphorical. He talks about there's a rope hanging in a tree for him. Could be literal, could be somebody is literally planning to get him and hang him, or it could even be talking about that he's wanted for something, he's gonna be executed, or it's some kind of metaphor that something bad is waiting to happen to him. Musically, this would have been, I think, a hit for an R&B group from this period, a soul group, or a Motown act with just a little bit change up the production of the music. I think it could have been huge. I love this song. I think it's great, and it continues the theme of the working man, of the lower class. Great, great track. And that's the end of side A. Side B kicks off with one of their biggest hits of all time. This is the number 2 most streamed track on the internet from CCR today. This is Fortunate Son. Here we go. Again, great riff, is simple, unique, and immediately hooks the listener. Got a great groove here too.
Some folks are born made to wave the flag. Ooh, they're red, white, and blue. It ain't me. It ain't me. I ain't no senator, son. It ain't me. It ain't me. I ain't no fortunate one. No.
All right, so musically, this is a departure for the record. It's kind of the only negative in terms of coherency for the record, because the rest of these tracks are firmly grounded in the Americana range, tradition. You've got rockabilly, you've got classic rock and roll, you've got folk, you've got some blues. This one, though, it's only in the roots music tradition because it is a form of rock, an evolution of rock and roll, but it's not really close to the origins of Americana, of roots music, like the other songs on this record are. This is a harder edge. It's really got that late 60s harder rock sound that was starting to develop at the time, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's great. I love it. The song is fantastic, but musically it's just kind of out of place on the album. But it also works great to kick off the second side of the record, because for me, you want to start a record out, and if you're dealing with a vinyl where you actually have to flip it, you also want to start out the second side out with a song that's going to smack you in the face. Down on the Corner did it in a way because it was a dance song and it kind of hooked you in and got you grooving. This one did it in the way where it just comes and just hits you right there with that riff, that groove, and John starts belting. Lyrically, this is often described as an anti-war song, and it is a protest song, but it's not really anti-war, and it's not even really anti-draft. It's anti-unfair treatment of the working class in the draft. There were millionaires, there were politicians who were getting deferments for their sons during the Vietnam War. They'd have to go fight. They could get out of the draft. Fogarty, working class guy from a working class family, he got drafted and he saw this unfair treatment. It's like, oh, I gotta go, but these guys don't because they're getting special privileges because of their parent status. They're pulling strings, and Fogarty wasn't happy with that, and that's what he wrote this song about. But what's great, even though its theme is dated because the draft, we haven't had an active draft in this country for around 50 years, but you don't have to know the historical context because he wrote the lyrics in such a way where you get the general idea of what he's talking about from these lines, that he's talking about somebody who doesn't have the privileges that other people have, and that's keeping up with the theme of the record, also of the lower class person, of the working man. Great hook, one of the greatest classic rock songs ever written. All right, up next, this is Don't Look Now. This is definitely my least favorite from the record, but here we go. Again, we're talking rockabilly, folk. Yeah, nice little ditty. I like the rockabilly folk throwback feel to it. Musically, again, fits the record. Lyrically, of course, still keeping with the working man. I think it's the weakest track on the record, with maybe the exception of Poor Boy Shuffle, but still, CCR is so good, even their weakest songs are better than a lot of bands' best. All right, up next, this is one of my favorite CCR album cuts. It's a cover of, as Fogarty says in a live show one time, a great old sing-along song. This is the Midnight Special.
Well, you wake up in the morning.
That guitar, man. He's got it tuned down a whole step, I believe. Get that deep, dark, swampy sound.
You see the same old thing. Left the midnight special.
Again, those lush harmonies.
Left the midnight special. Shine a light on me. Left the midnight special. Shine a ever-loving light on me.
Great cover. To me, they did with this what they didn't do with Cotton Fields, which is really, really make it their own. This song, if you hear other versions of this before this version came out, there's no really blues rock version, which is kind of what they did here. A little less rock, but definitely blues. Just a great, as John says, old sing-along song, and John put a singing on it, belting out these mournful lyrics lamenting the life of a prisoner. Again, I said, fitting right in the theme of the album with the plight of the lower class man, making this record just the most lyrically coherent, thematically coherent record that I think CCR ever produced. All right, up next, I forgot about this one. This is another instrumental, so this one will probably be in the bottom three along with Don't Look Now and Poor Boy Shuffle, but again, still a nice little ditty. Let's do it. this really makes this record parallel. This one is just kind of odd. One of the oddest CCR songs there is. So let's do it. This is the album closer, Effigy. There's a medieval feel to that lick, that riff. So you hear it's got a folk vibe, but there's this darkness to it, and again, I just hear like this medieval thing going on. Lyrically, we're keeping right with the theme. He talks about the humble subjects. They're burning somebody in effigy, and the question in the refrain, who is burning? Who are they burning in effigy? And to me, I wonder if that's supposed to be like, are they burning an effigy of the correct person, the person who's actually responsible for the issues that they have grievances with? I don't know. I'm not sure what Fogerty's trying to ask here, but I love the music of this song. Very odd, particularly for CCR. It sounds more like a 90s alternative type track. There's this medieval vibe, this like medieval folk vibe, and I think that that's intentional, particularly with the lyrics where he's using this idea of burning an effigy, which is something from historical time periods that we don't really do, at least in modern Western society, that much anymore. But it's again about the plight of the lower classes, which is what this entire record encompasses. And once again, I think this is the most thematically coherent record. Musically, also, everything is pretty much in the roots and Americana spectrum, with the exception of Fortunate Son. But I don't know what other album Fogerty could have put this on and it fit better lyrically, so I'm glad it's on here. Great record. One of their best. Some fans and critics consider it their absolute best. I don't, but it's an incredible record from top to bottom. This ended an incredible 3-album, 1-year run, which is insane to put out this amount of content at this quality in 1 year. And then the next year, 1970, they released what I consider their magnum opus, Cosmo's Factory, which I hope to get to. If I'm still doing this next year, I plan to be in. I think it was a summer release, so next summer I'll be checking that one out. So if y'all like this one, stay tuned.